Well, huge heavyweight matchup at UFC 260 this weekend. We're going to get into that in just a second with our good friend, the pride of Montreal, Quebec. He's the Bob McKenzie, Darren Dreger, Pierre Lebrun, and Frank Saravalli of MMA, all rolled into one very attractive body. It's Ariel Helwani in front of what appears to be a library. Have you really read all those books, Ariel?
Not only have I read them, Jay, and by the way, great to be on once again. I've actually written at least 10% of the books that you see back here. Bashful guy, as Canadians, we don't like to puff our chest out too much. But, since I've been doing stuff from home, I mean, where else am I going to do my shows? I mean, they're right there. I'm going to sit in front of them. So here we are.
And you put on your Expos hoodie to represent the hometown a little bit, which is a good thing. You and I
Yes.
talk about this all the time. We still dream of the day when my parent company, Bell, will just move the Tampa Rays back up to Montreal where they belong.
I'm kind of just wondering what's taking so long at this point, if we're being honest. I mean, I just feel like the clock is ticking. WWE has taken up residency at Tropicana Field, so finally they've gotten an actual good product to hold events there. Okay, so that's all well and good. Let's take the team. Let's send it back to Montreal. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I want an expansion team. I don't care about Tampa. I don't want to see happen to a fan base over there what happened to me and my fan base. So it would be nice. I would just like for Rob Manfred to speed things up while I'm still young. I'm about to be 40, Jay. I don't have, an entire lifetime to wait for this team to come back.
You have your whole life ahead of you, my friend. Let's talk, before we get to UFC 260, can we talk about 261 and the fact that, speaking of Florida, that will be a supposedly capacity crowd in Jacksonville for 261, a full house, 15,000 people. And you knew if anyone was going to try it first, it was going to be Dana. How is the UFC going to pull this off?
Well, they haven't, as of right this moment, released details as to what they are going to do as far as the fans are concerned. But you are right. They are expecting 15,000 fans at this event, April 24th in Jacksonville. And the main reason why they wanted to go back to Jacksonville was because back in May of last year, Jacksonville was essentially the only city in America that welcomed them in the very beginning of the pandemic. So they're going back to the same arena, the ViStar Veteran Memorial Arena, and they kind of want to give back, but this time sell tickets. But they haven't released, what you'll need to show, what you'll need to do. For example, here in New York on Monday, Madison Square Garden announced beginning April 1st, you can show a full vaccination card or a negative test, and you can go to Knicks games or Rangers games. They haven't released any of that information. All they have said is 15,000 fans, April 24th, 3 title fights, Kamaru Usman, Jorge Masvidal for the welterweight title at the very top. And oh, by the way, May 15th, they're going to the Toyota Center, Houston Rockets Stadium over there in Houston, Texas. So it seems like this event coming up on Saturday could be one of their last at the UFC Apex in Las Vegas, which has held the majority of the events over the past year.
So you mentioned the event this weekend, massive heavyweight title fight. Everyone's talking about it. Francis Ngannou actually lost to Stipe Miocic back in January of 2018. Then he loses to Derek Lewis 5 months later. Then he goes on a 4-match win streak, and those matches last a total of less than 3 minutes. He's just unstoppable at this point. So what changed, Ariel, from that first loss to Stipe to where he is right now?
Okay, so when he went into that first fight against Stipe in Boston, he was blazing hot. He was the favorite going into that fight against the champion Stipe Miocic. He was coming off an incredible knockout of Alistair Overeem. He literally knocked Overeem's head back. It looked like Overeem's head was going to actually fly off his shoulders. That's how scary he was at that point. And he looked really good in the first round against Stipe, and then Stipe weathered the storm and essentially beat him up for the next 4 rounds and won via decision. And then his confidence was shot. The next time, as you said, he appeared in the octagon, he fought Derek Lewis, and he was a changed man. Like, he could not pull the trigger. I think he threw like 20 punches in that entire 3-round fight. He was booed out of the building. It seemed like Francis Ngannou was going to be and never was. And to your point, since then, he's gone on this incredible run. So he got his confidence back. He learned from those mistakes against Stipe and Derek Lewis. And since then, he's been a guy on a mission to get back to that title fight. And he's gotten increasingly annoyed about the fact that they wouldn't give him the title shot. So he just went out there and started knocking guys out in 20, 30, 40 seconds. And then they couldn't deny him anymore. So I'm curious to see what kind of lessons he's learned since then. He's with a new team now. He's training full time in Las Vegas. And if he will be able to maybe not exert himself to like the 100% capacity max in the first round, and allow himself to, spread out his energy over 25 minutes, because there's a very good chance that this fight goes into the fourth and fifth rounds, the championship round, so to speak. What does Francis Ngannou look like? We know what Stipe looks like when he fights in those rounds, but we don't know how Francis looks. We're about to find out on Saturday.
And to your point, he was the favorite going into their first fight back in 2018. He's the favorite again. Are odds makers being seduced by his knockout power? Is that fair to Stipe at this point?
So I don't want this to sound like I'm disrespecting Francis, but I do believe that is the case. Odds makers, bettors, they love the knockout, right? And Francis is the scariest potential heavyweight champion that the UFC has had since Brock Lesnar. Stipe's appeal is that he is the everyman. He's a firefighter on his days off, right? I mean, that's why people love this guy. He's just, a father, a husband, everyday Joe from Cleveland, Ohio, who just happens to be the greatest and most decorated heavyweight champion in UFC history. Doesn't sell himself. He's kind of like the Kawhi Leonard / Tim Duncan of the UFC. He doesn't understand the prize fighting aspect of this game. And then you have Francis, who looks like he's chiseled out of stone, who knocks people's heads off, who's not in there for a long time. He's there for a very, very short time. And all of a sudden, people start to get excited about this. But I think Stipe is being disrespected. I think he should be the favorite. If you had me sitting here and asked me to make a pick, I'm leaning towards Stipe as of right this moment. Stipe is a very smart fighter. He's a very methodical fighter. He's very good on his feet. He's a quick fighter. He's not just going to go in there and stand and trade with Francis Ngannou and allow himself to get knocked out. No chance in heck. He has confidence going into this fight. And oh, by the way, not only are they fighting for the heavyweight title, they're fighting for the opportunity to be the first man to welcome Jon Jones to the heavyweight division. That prize potentially even bigger than the heavyweight strap. So there's a lot at stake in this fight on Saturday.
So much potential pay-per-view money for whoever wins this fight and then faces Jones, to your point there, Ariel. But here's the question. Who does Jon Jones match up with better, Stipe or Francis?
Oh, that is a really good question. I would say, and I think some people will say I'm crazy for this, I will say Francis, because I think Jones will have the speed advantage going up to heavyweight. Like I said, Stipe is a very quick heavyweight. He's actually slimmed down. I'm very curious to see how much he weighs come Friday morning. But if he comes in at around 230 or so, which he's been known to do as of late, he won't be that much bigger than Jon Jones is come Jon's heavyweight debut later on this year. And so I think that if Jon fights Francis, he'll be able to, Francis' technique isn't the greatest. He's got incredible power, but in terms of his wrestling, in terms of his overall boxing technique, Jon has the advantage there. And so I think if I'm Jon Jones, yes, no one wants to fight Francis. He hits like a Mack truck. But I think he wouldn't want to go toe-to-toe with Stipe because Stipe is a lot more similar to Jon than Francis is.
Let's talk about Khabib Nurmagomedov. He's officially retired. As we know, Michael Chandler, Charles Oliveira are going to fight for the lightweight belt in May. I guess my question for you, Ariel, is there's a lot of other lightweights that people seem to be more interested in. Conor McGregor, everyone's still interested in Conor. Obviously, Dustin Poirier's right back in there. And then Justin Gaethje. For those three guys, what does it mean that they are not fighting for these vacant titles?
And look at you, Jay, with the MMA knowledge. I mean, you have come a long way since the first time I met you many moons ago. I mean, this is insider stuff right here. This is hardcore fan stuff. I love these topics.
It's all Aaron Bronstetter. It's all Bronstetter just feeding it to me in my ear.
I've never heard of that name. I've absolutely never heard of that name. I'm giving you all the credit. So that is a great question, and the fans were very upset when Dustin didn't get the title shot. But let me be very clear. I'll be the first to say when the UFC is doing someone dirty, they're not doing Dustin Poirier dirty here. Dustin said he wanted to go after the trilogy. He wanted to go after Conor McGregor. Now, can you say, hey, then why don't you just do the Conor McGregor versus Dustin Poirier 3 fight for the belt? Yeah, you could say that. And quite frankly, I wouldn't have a problem with that. But you have Charles Oliveira, who's won 8 in a row, and I think deserves to be fighting for a belt. So they got one half of the equation correct. If you want to strip away big-time money fights, you want to strip away prize fighting, then yeah, it probably should have been Charles versus Dustin. But Dustin went in this direction. Okay, so then you have Charles versus either Gaethje or Chandler. All right, well, Gaethje just fought for the belt back in October. I don't really have a problem with Chandler fighting for the belt. Now the question is, Dustin and Conor isn't a done deal just yet. They're hoping now that it will be a done deal for July. But what if the negotiations tend to drag on even more? Does Conor then say, because Conor is actually Dustin's greatest ally right now, Conor's telling the UFC, I want you to figure this out. Make the fight happen with Dustin Poirier. If at some point he loses patience and says, you know what, this is taking too long, go in a different direction, well, now you have Justin Gaethje sitting there. And that's a big-time fight for Conor McGregor, or you have Nathan Diaz sitting there as well. So Dustin has to be careful now with the negotiations. He just lost the title fight opportunity. He doesn't want to lose the Conor McGregor big-time fight, which, by the way, is a bigger fight than a title fight because Conor's the biggest draw in the history of the sport. So the next couple months going to be very interesting for Dustin Poirier.
You said something that intrigued me because I've always wondered if Nate and Conor would finally finish their trilogy. Do you still think there's a chance that we'll get Diaz-McGregor 3?
Yeah, I actually think there's a chance we might get it later on this summer.
Wow.
Let me be clear before anyone clips this off and says, Ariel's reporting that Diaz and McGregor is a done deal, which tends to happen more often than not for some strange reason. Right now, they're trying their hardest to make Poirier versus McGregor 3. I think if Poirier versus McGregor 3, for whatever reason, crumbles and falls through, the next guy they go to is Nathan Diaz. Nathan Diaz has a couple fights left on his UFC contract. He is chomping at the bit. He wanted to fight earlier this month. They couldn't get him an opponent. Wanted to fight in April. It doesn't look like they're going to get him an opponent as of now. He really wants to get back in there. And so not a bad plan B, right? The most lucrative, trilogy potentially in the history of the UFC would be those two guys. So they're keeping him on ice for now. I think they're trying to make the Dustin fight happen. But at some point come, April, early May, if it can't get done, I wouldn't be shocked if they start looking in the direction of the 209. The 209, by the way, the area code of Stockton, California.
Oh, man, that would be terrific to see. Okay, we've talked so much UFC. We want to lighten the mood a little bit, talk about some of your other favorite sports. And for you, Ariel Helwani, your favorite sports teams are on a real roll right now. Okay, so we've got your beloved Montreal Canadiens. They are in a playoff spot. Your beloved Syracuse Orange, they are in the Sweet 16. Incredible. And then your beloved New York Knickerbockers are somewhat decent. Julius Randle, an all-star. Canadian R.J. Barrett, looking very good as of late, playing very, very well. I guess my question for you is, if you had to pick out of those three teams that you love and admire, you had to pick one team to win a championship this year, which of those three teams is winning it?
Okay, and of course, I'd be remiss if I didn't give a shout-out to the Buffalo Bills, who had an incredible season, my beloved NFL team. They fell short, but shout out to them. They're going to win a Super Bowl in the next couple of years. You heard it here first, Jay. That is a tough question. Shout out to Buddy Boeheim. What a run he's had.
Yeah.
I mean, this guy is unbelievable. He'll never have to pay for a meal again in the 315. Shout out to the Canadians. Started off strong. A little bit of a rough patch. Marc Bergevin, I don't know how he continues to survive all of these moves. At some point, someone has to look at him, but alas, I digress. If I had to pick one, Jay, I'll go with the beloved orange and blue for a couple reasons. Number one, I have seen the Canadians win a Stanley Cup in 1993. I have seen the Syracuse Orange win a national championship in 2003 when I was a student there. I have never seen the New York Knicks, probably my favorite of all my favorite sports teams, win a championship. Last time, of course, was 1973. What Tom Thibodeau has done, Jay, to resurrect this franchise, he should be the coach of the year. I don't care what happens, even if they finish 500. What Julius Randle has done at 26 years young and said, you know what, everyone's counting me out. I'm going to be the most improved player. I'm going to lead this team back to the playoffs. I'm an all-star now for the first time. Nothing short of amazing. And I heard all those people who counted out our fellow Canadian R.J. Barrett. This man is 20 years old. He can't even drink legally in America. And they're ready to count him out. And look what he's doing this year. Oh, by the way, we've got Emmanuel Quickly, who should be the rookie of the year. We got Derrick Rose with a great comeback here in the latter portion of his career. We got guys like Nerlens Noel, everyone, counting him out, Reggie Bullock, Alec Burks. Who are these guys? I'll tell you who they are. They're a blue-collar, hard-working team, the kind of team that New York City deserves and loves. The Garden will be rocking come spring, Jay, and I just hope that team from Brooklyn is ready, because we're probably going to face them in the first round. I pray to God that we get the Brooklyn Nets, because I'll say it right now, we will beat the Brooklyn Nets in the first round. You heard it here first, Jay.
I love this. That is absolutely going viral. Forget about the Diaz-Conor thing. That's what's going viral. Pray to God. Okay, one last thing for you, because you've been so patient with us. On Twitter on Monday, the old Twitter machine, Ariel, this tweet was going around asking what you think, who you think of when you see the original TSN logo. Who comes to mind when you see the original TSN logo? And I know, as a person who grew up in Montreal, grew up in this country, you watched TSN all your life, you remember the logo. I'm curious as to who you thought of when you saw that original logo.
Oh, my God. First of all, love the logo. Bring it back.
Yeah.
Please, sooner rather than later. By the way, bring back Sports Desk. Enough of this sports centre.
You're gonna have to talk to your bosses at ESPN about that, because when they bought into this network, that's what happened, right? We became Sports Center, not
Really?
Sports Desk. Yeah, that's right.
Let me call Jimmy Pitaro right here.
Yeah, call Pitaro.
Let me just get him on the.
Call Bob Iger.
Okay. Yes. Bob Chapek, I do believe,
that's
is
right.
the man in charge now. Okay. Shout out to Jim Van Horn. That's the first name that comes to mind. In fact, if I'm being honest, the first name that came to mind, Jay, was not Jim Van Horn. It was just Van Horn. Why? Why? Sing it with me now, Jay. Da da da. Dun, dun, dun.
Dave Van Horn.
Dun, 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 dun.
I used to do a Dave Van Horn impression around the newsroom, and it would just be, Pedro Martinez is the pitcher. Darren Fletcher is the catcher. He would Dave.
Up and away. El Presidente, El Perfecto, I believe, July 27th, 1991, Chavez Ravine. Dave Van Horn, and who was his color analyst for all those years?
Rusty Staub?
So close. The great Kenny Singleton.
Singleton, right, who's now on Yankees broadcast, right?
That's right.
Yes.
And who's Ken Singleton's first cousin?
Denzel Washington.
The head coach of the Philadelphia 76ers, Doc Rivers.
Doc Rivers, that's right. That's right. Yes.
It all comes together some way, somehow. So Jim and Dave Van Horn, I used to love watching Labatt Blue, Expos baseball.
Yeah.
You know, they'd always have like 28 or so games on TSN. Never quite the full gamut like the Blue Jays. I don't know why we didn't get the love, but, you know, we got the French games here and there. Of course, Roger Brulot of Al Diaz, Denis Cassavant. Remember those guys? Rondell. You remember him? He was incredible. Vladimir Guerrero. This is bringing back such great memories, 1993 against the Philadelphia Phillies. In any event, so many great names, so many great individuals. None greater than Jay Onrait, my good friend, who I love so dearly. I would just like to see Sports Desk come back. It was great. 30 minutes. You know what? I was a big NBA fan back in the day. The only time Sports Desk would ever talk about the NBA, there would be like 30 seconds left on the broadcast. Darren Detition. And now let's take a look at the NBA scores from last night. It'll be like a scrolling full screen, and that's it. Not even a highlight. Couldn't even be bothered with the highlight. All of a sudden, Canada's in a powerhouse. We're going to win gold, by the way, in the Olympics. I don't know if you heard this or not in the basketball.
Men's and women's, basketball. I think, though there's so many incredible women in the NCAA tournament this year. And I will say, if I could just throw out John Wells' name. John Wells, when we got him at the very beginning of the start of this network, it was such a huge deal because he was on Hockey Night in Canada, and it was a big deal for John to leave Hockey Night in Canada and go to a cable network at the time in 1984. It was almost, to be honest, I think people thought he was crazy. And so, yeah, he put us on the map. So shout out to John Wells, good guy.
Is that who comes to mind for you?
I think it is. It's John, it's Jim Van Horn, also Dave Hodge. Huge deal when we got Dave here, right? And a huge
another Hockey Night in Canada guy.
Another Hockey Night in Canada guy. And a huge deal for us to have you on the show, my friend. So proud that you're from this country, that you've done so well in the sport that you've chosen to report in. You could really do anything, but you become a star in MMA and a star on ESPN, and we're all proud of you, buddy, and I'm thrilled that you're doing so well. And all the best to you and your family. We'll talk to you very soon.
Thank you. Always a pleasure to be on. I cannot wait, sincerely from the bottom of my heart, I cannot wait to go back home and go to God's country, Canada, later on this year. I miss everyone back home. Thank you, Jay. All the best to you, and I hope to see you soon in person.
Thanks, buddy.